We are live. Welcome to episode number 2 of Live from LaunchPad. How does my mic look? Looks pretty good. How's our picture looking? I feel like I need to dip down a bit. There we go. So on this episode of Live from LaunchPad, I am joined by my cohort, colleague, friend, Ian Cordero. Hello.
Hi, George.
And today we're going to be discussing empathy. Being real, this is something that I have had significant challenges with in my life. And the sense I have, not least because Simon Sinek's given this crazy popular talk about it, is that for the direction that business is heading into,
right,
it feels like really important. And if I probably don't get it, what I might end up being able to build might be hamstrung by my perhaps inability to empathize, right? So we're going to get into that. And we're here at Launchpad. You can hear probably loads of stuff going on in the background. It's buzzing today. There's like loads of stuff going on. First up, how has you've been 2 weeks here now?
Yeah.
How's
turning 3.
3 weeks. How are you finding the Launchpad process?
Really amazing. So it's all new to me. I've been in the business for so long since I've graduated in college, but the whole process is really new and very enriching because I don't know these methodologies and processes that can actually expedite my ideas much faster and in a more accurate way. I really value what I've learned in the past 3 weeks.
And of course, one of the things we were thrown into almost immediately was
empathy.
A design thinking challenge. Of course, the first core key component of that being the empathize process,
exactly.
Right? So I think that's where it's definitely taken on. This whole idea of empathy has taken on a new meaning and gravity in my life. So the other day we were asked kind of what was our superpowers or whatever, and you mentioned that empathy was yours. So that kind of pricked up my ears because I'm like, if I was going to have like an anti-superpower, like I feel like if you're like empathy super person, I would probably be like kryptonite, empathy kryptonite, right? And that's painfully been borne out in my own life around people saying, oh, you just don't care, you're so in your head, like, and then when I like review situations being like, oh yeah, like how did I not see that would have been the best way to act,
right?
So I guess, like, how have you come to know that empathy is your superpower, and how does that show up?
Amazing question. So as when I was young, I was really brought up in a very sheltered home. We're very sheltered growing up, and I see my parents how they empathize. So in the Philippines, I'm not sure if this is customary here, but we do have household helpers.
Okay.
So we have nannies that's like with you 24/7. And my parents were always very kind to them. We take care of them like their family. And growing up, that's how I was brought up. So when I went to the real world, I was faced with bosses who are so mean, so cruel, worse than what's his name? Worse than this famous chef. What's his name?
Gordon Ramsay.
Gordon Ramsay,
Right.
Who really, will really call you out for your mistakes or if you're not catching up. So I was really mind blown. Like I grew up with so much empathy and now I'm being treated this way. And I've seen how different leaders are. Like I've had a horrible boss, I've had a very empathetic boss, and I've seen how they treat people affect the work and productivity of people. So I was working for boss A, who was really cruel and mean, and everyone was just emotionally drained. That no matter how much we try to achieve our objectives, it's just not happening. And then I've seen a boss who's so empathetic, who's really caring and understanding of someone's not just emotions, but obviously everyone has a personal life outside work.
Yep.
And you can't just take that out of the equation. Okay. That's always going to be a part of someone's life because it's their life. People who have kids, people who have family matters or parents who are sick. My horrible boss used to like call out people and say, "Why aren't you at work? It's already 9. Why aren't you here?" So it was just very stressful because someone's really watching you 24/7.
Yeah.
And this other boss was really very open, like, as long as you're producing the work we need, I'm fine. You're an adult, do what you want and you need. and you'll see people change. You'll
Okay.
see how much they have more respect for you, how much they love their job because they're given that kind of freedom. But I will not deny that there are people who will misuse and abuse that. So through the years, I've learned that once you empathize and you lead with empathy, people are more productive. It's a much healthier state. People are much open and they speak their minds and they really collaborate with you.
Okay.
Unlike if you're someone who's like, hey, Ian, did you do this? Oh, George, you're such a prick. Why didn't you do this for me today? I'm your boss. You should be doing this and that.
Yeah.
People tend to like hold back a lot and people become more insecure, become doubtful of their capabilities
Yeah.
because you're not helping them, you're not drawing out the best out of that person. You're more like stopping this person from really growing and helping you out.
Okay.
I mean, there's a reason why you have employed this person.
Yeah.
They have skills, abilities that you don't have or you need within your business, and you have to make sure they execute that when you hire them, and you have to trust them that they can do that.
Okay.
And if you don't, you're not creating a very harmonious culture within your company. So for me, it's another thing is when you hire someone, I'd rather hire someone who has a higher EQ and might be an average IQ.
Right.
I've read a lot of books about it, even in the Marines and in the Navy. EQ is more important than
Okay.
IQ because you don't leave your group, right?
And so for those who are perhaps fresh to these terms, EQ meaning emotional intelligence. Yeah,
right?
Cool. So hearing your kind of backstory with it, it feels like maybe it's important to perhaps like establish a rough working definition of the term, because in what I've heard you say there's like, it feels like there's a trust is really key in what
Exactly.
you perhaps, but also there's something about kindness as well. There's like recognizing that we all have lives outside of things. So perhaps, because I was always thinking that empathy perhaps was just this one specific skill around being able to almost like feel someone else's emotions. But what I'm hearing from you is unless perhaps we just have different ways of understanding the term, it's broader than that. So maybe do you want to just, how do you understand the term empathy in terms of if we were going to define it for the purposes of this conversation?
I think it's really trying to, so just like our design thinking process, you empathize, you put yourself in that person's shoe.
Okay.
Right? So I think for me, top of mind is always that somebody loves this person. This person matters to someone else. And treating them poorly is a reflection of how I should, treating them poorly will be a reflection of how I treat others and myself as well. Right?
Okay.
So regardless if you're a prick to me today or not, I will still treat you with respect because that's how you empathize, because you'll never know what that person is going through.
Okay.
He might have spoken ill about you or maybe disregard an idea you had and you felt really upset about it. I think empathy also includes good communication skills.
Okay.
Right? So if you feel hurt, you should talk about that. And always try to understand why that person is acting in a certain way, or not just understanding, also speaking to them about it. Right? Because you'll never know. And that's how you empathize. Just like in the business world, how do you understand what your customer needs if you don't talk to them?
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If you don't talk to them, if you don't understand where they're coming from, you won't be able to address their pains.
Yeah.
So I think in any relationship, it should be the same. And that's how empathy should work.
Okay. So I'm hearing there's a putting yourself in other people's shoes, and we can speak a bit more to that later on, because there's a very real exercise that I found hugely valuable I can share. So we got putting yourself in other people's shoes, and then I also heard a piece around communication, and that almost, I guess it's also like what is the best way that I can communicate so that what I need
can be addressed
but also can be received in a way that the other person can really get what I need, and also how can I perhaps then listen, because of course listening is a key part of communication. Like, how can I listen so that I really understand what you need as the other person in the conversation? Okay. And I guess I'm curious, because in the way you describe like boss A and boss B, like it seems like almost the boss A was that kind of old school, like just get the job done and success at all costs. And whereas boss B perhaps feels more like I'm not sure if modern leader is the right term, but someone who is more tuned into the needs of how to manage people in our current day and age, where there is much more greater emphasis given to values, to purpose, to perhaps compassion, right? I'm curious to know whether was there an age difference between boss A and boss B, or is that too general an assumption to make?
I think there was an age gap difference, but at the same time, not really that far.
Not one that should have made that.
It's not like a big gap between the two. But I just want to, for the sake of us, for this conversation, you are a coach, right?
Yes.
And you're telling me you don't have empathy? I mean, not much, because you're having a hard time, right?
Well, so I guess, here also is where we get into one other question I wanted to explore with you, was like hardware versus software.
Right.
And so what I mean by that is, so recently I got diagnosed with ADHD, and there's possibly some other elements of autism thrown in there. And so I guess I'm wondering, to what extent might I be hardwired, like my hardware is perhaps not as set up to empathize in what might be a traditional way, versus someone like yourself, where it seems like almost like from your earliest days, you were immersed in an environment that was supporting you to develop empathy. But I guess I'm also curious, does that mean you just had your conditioning is like your software, right?
Right.
And so from an early age, you were getting your software, your empathy software, regularly upgraded by your home environment. Whereas myself, we just mentioned, going off to a boarding school, I was getting perhaps the opposite. My conditioning was, all emotional intelligence essentially stripped out in favor of really hard, clear, focused mental abilities.
Really?
Yeah.
So through the years, I'm curious, you've had relationships. How are you able to manage that, given that you grew up with just being
the reality is that it has always been a challenge for me to, particularly tactilely, to express affection in traditional ways.
Okay.
And so for me, coming across books like The 5 Love Languages is really useful, because it's almost like,
there's a process, and you can identify
here's tick these boxes to have expressed empathy and affection, right? And it drives my current partner a little bit insane, because for her, I think she feels she's so tactile, and so can see how to connect with others. She's a fantastic people person, and yet she's there going well, how do you not know just to do this, or how is it not a natural thing? And I'm like, look, if you give me a process, I can execute the process, right? So I do recognize perhaps there is some, what I'm trying to currently work out through my kind of therapeutic work is to look at what is my software that maybe can be changed, but also then perhaps what is my hardware that I need to just recognize. I could try for a decade to try and change that, and I'm not gonna it's gonna be a fish trying to climb a tree,
Yeah, I agree.
So what lands from you as I share that idea?
I think it's really communicating. Right. So some people are, as you've mentioned, that's how you were hardwired, right? That's your hardware. That's who you are. It's how you were programmed initially. But I think the way you communicate and tell that person, I really don't know what you're expecting of me, but if you could tell me, then I can adjust to that, is a much clearer way to, be in that kind of relationship. You might not have that clear empathy, emotional intelligence that we call, but at least you're able to communicate and change. Because the fact that you can identify and you are aware and you are willing, right? I mean, you're in a relationship, you're very much willing to adjust and compromise. I think that's enough.
Okay.
You don't really need to change everything about you just because, right?
Yeah. I
but
think
there are ways to improve it.
Yeah,
really.
I think that's why I was keen to have a conversation, because I know it's such a key business factor, right?
It is.
And by the way, if you're getting some value from this, enjoying this, then please hit a comment, stick comments up, let us know your take on this. Particularly this piece around hardware versus software. And I was keen to have this conversation because I know there are, I hope, ways that I can improve, even if look, I need a checklist. Great. Well, what's the best way to create the checklist? What are perhaps some common questions or practices? So I wonder, from your early experiences, was there anything you spotted maybe like practices or regular routines or things your
It's good that
parents
you
did?
asked. It's good that you asked because growing up, I'm not really confrontational.
Okay.
I will freak out if someone confronts me. I wasn't a good communicator as well.
Okay.
I really had a very hard time articulating myself because sometimes I'm rattled that my mom's gonna get mad. Through my childhood, as you know, I'm very different. I'm part of the LGBTQ family, but in the Philippines, we're very, very traditional.
Yeah.
So it's hard to come out because there's the fact that I might be disowned by my parents, or I will get battered because it's not right, it's immorally correct, and the Philippines being so Catholic.
Yeah.
For a long time, I just held back. I didn't speak. I didn't explain. I didn't try to communicate that I am different and I am just me. Like, I shouldn't really be holding myself back because for the longest time I was so stressed, keeping it to myself that this is me. But then I realized I should communicate that this is me. I can't do anything,
Yeah.
right? And it has to be communicated because if not, people will really not understand where you're coming from. And through the years, I think because I held back for so long, and then I started opening up, like a flower.
Yeah.
You're starting to open up and everything becomes more beautiful. Everything, more opportunities come in. I meet more people because of it. So when I started to learn how to communicate better, articulate myself better, and tell people exactly, of course, in a very humble and kind way. I don't expect everyone to understand me. I don't expect everyone to agree with me.
Yeah.
As long as you keep an open mind that this is an adult conversation, like a very mature conversation where we can also agree to disagree,
Yeah.
then for me that's fine. As long as I can tell you that, let's just say you upset me or I feel like that wasn't right what you did to me, I will tell you. So through the years I've kind of improved and I became more open, and I didn't think really hard about it because usually I'll think I shouldn't be saying this, I shouldn't be doing this because this. There's so many things going in my head. When in fact I just could have told them the right thing. I was honest.
Yeah.
Honesty is very important when you lead with empathy.
Yeah. I really get that. Really comes across in what you're saying here is that
Yeah.
the more you were able to show up authentically, and almost like that feels like if we were going to have like a playbook, like a checklist,
Yeah.
like the first would be like show up authentically and share you, right? Because what I hear is like as you started to do that, you say like it was like a flowering, right?
Yeah.
And I think for myself, if I want to connect with someone, even if I may not be the best at intuiting what their feelings are or whatever, if
Yeah.
at the outset I've said, look, here's what I'm pretty great at, here's some things where I might have some challenges, already I've opened up a bridge
Exactly.
of authentic communication, right? So they almost know where I'm at as well. And we've more chance of connecting empathetically, whatever that might look like.
Yeah. So just an example, like I had this colleague before and he was quite erratic until one day he told me, Ian, I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety. So that's the reason why sometimes I kind of snap.
Yeah.
And that changed a lot of things because I now understand why he snaps.
Yeah.
I understand how I can manage him. And we worked so much better after that.
Yeah.
Because imagine if I didn't know. And I just thought, oh, this guy just keeps snapping at me.
Yeah, 100%.
And I don't understand the context of that. And some people might think it's about them, but you should never take that personally because sometimes even if, let's just say, you improve your EQ or your empathy to others, and there will still be some people who won't understand or agree with you, and they will do harmful things to you because
Yeah.
they're just that way. But if you kind of make sure that, okay, I've done my part, and if this person is still that way, I'm good.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So it has to be a two-way street. Even if you empathize, you should also understand that even if you have a high emotional intelligence, not everyone will understand it. And not everyone has EQ, and not everyone will have the same amount of respect or the same amount of upbringing. Or if you've so people come from different backgrounds, different upbringing, so definitely even if you have this
they're
type
gonna,
of
they're going to have had
it's going to be different
software overlay.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it will always be different, but it's really about understanding that person
Cool.
and making sure that, okay, if we can't agree on this, then that's okay.
Yeah.
We move forward.
But at least we've opened up a space of honesty.
Yeah.
And mutual self-respect or mutual respect for each other.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Cool.
I agree.
All right. So, just looking at the time, we've got about 9 minutes or so until you and I need to go to a lecture. Let me just scope out what's happening on the old LinkedIn, see if anyone's commenting or anything like that. I don't even know. I think, look, it's pretty cool. It comes up here. There we go. Look. Hi, 2 viewers. I don't know who you are viewing, but thank you so much for tuning in. Hit us up in the comments. Let us know what's going on. So, to kind of, this feels like we could go for another at least hour, right? Which is great. So perhaps we'll have a kind of empathy part 2, right? But maybe just to close out with a couple of what are some things that can be done? Like if you're watching this and you're more like me, oh, it's a bit of a challenge, right? And so there's one exercise that I have found, and you mentioned the phrase putting yourself in someone else's shoes, and it was an exercise I came across from a guy called Ken Wilber, who's an absolute legend in the whole kind of psychology, personal development type field. He put forward this theory, this integral theory, which is about essentially brings everything together around psychological development. And he said that in order to really empathize, you can literally visualize yourself stepping into the other person's shoes. And when I did that, it was super profound. And I now understand, because of some of the kind of ways I've understood, electric universe theory and energetics, that there's something very real and physical happening on an energetic level when we do that. So that is one exercise I found really useful. Is if you're having challenges, and because like you say, everyone has this story that we know nothing about, right?
Exactly.
So if you are someone who has to manage people or lead people, and you've got someone you've got a challenge with, very much get a fresh piece of paper out, visualize yourself, feel yourself stepping into their shoes, and from that place, write down any insights and intuitions you get about what's going on, because that then gives you an opening for a conversation. Right?
I agree.
And you may well be, I would be surprised if you are not surprised by the results that come from that. Okay, so that's one exercise I found really useful. Anything else you've kind of found?
I think giving it some time. So sometimes, right? Let's just say we had an encounter and we had some bickering because we didn't agree on something.
Yeah.
Sometimes people need time. I'll give you time, I'll give you space, but I'll make sure to speak to you about it to make sure, we clear the air out, and I understand where you're coming from. And I think it's very important to also give people time, because not everyone can fix it right now. Because some relationships, they want it hey, I can't sleep without us fixing our problem. But sometimes some problems do need time. You need to give that space for that person to also reflect and think. You can't always enforce or push yourself to that person and say, hey, let's just fix this right now.
Yeah, and especially if there's high emotion, that's
exactly,
it's going to be a real challenge.
You have to keep the emotions at bay before you start conversation. You start the conversation with that person and start, trying to fix things.
Okay.
So I think it's managing and understanding that you need some people need time, and you really need to be authentic and open to understand another person. So
awesome. Well, I think that covers a lot of. Well, it feels like it doesn't cover. It covers. Here's the iceberg, right? We've scratched the surface. Okay.
Yeah.
But it feels like a good pausing point for now. And I've really enjoyed our conversation together.
Me too.
I feel like we should probably co-host some more of these live from LaunchPad episodes. So listen, if you have been tuning in, thank you so much. Let me just come over here to my screen so I can stop the stream. Tomorrow, what are we going to do tomorrow? I might actually share a really, really simple pitch formula that I shared with one of the. So amazingly, some of the students from Falmouth are doing a business boot camp. They did some presentations the other day, some pitches, and I shared this really short, simple framework. And it seemed to land well, so I'll share that tomorrow. And if you want to join me for that, that'd be cool.
For sure.
Sweet. All right, go well. Again, hit me up in the comments. Any questions, any topics you want us to cover? We've covered everything here from empathy and coming out as your true self, myself with the whole boarding school stuff. I'm definitely going to be discussing more of that. So let us know some topics, let us know some comments and some questions, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Bye.